Item Number, SCP-2736. Object Class, SCP-2736-1, formerly Euclid, SCP-2736-2, formerly Keter. Currently, neutralized. Special Containment Procedures. For its own protection, SCP-2736-1 is kept at Armed Site 29, in a standard humanoid containment chamber. Subject is allowed a television and a subscription to a newspaper of its choosing, a monthly allowance of $20, $30, $50, $75, $100, $125, US, amount periodically increased to account for inflation, has also been set aside to procure SCP-2736-1 with reading material and other media it may request. Once a week subject is allowed 1 hour in the small courtyard at the center of Building 11, under the supervision of one guard. Once a year subject is allowed one new photograph each of Patricia Nixon, Tricia Nixon Cox and Julie Nixon Eisenhower. All privileges are contingent on good behavior, and may be rescinded at any time by Project Head/2736. Subject's health should be monitored closely, as it has a history of phlebitis. SCP-2736-2 is uncontained at present. Long-term surveillance is to be maintained, with successful infiltration of its inner circle remaining a Class 4 priority. Update: Special containment procedures for SCP-2736 were discontinued on April 23, 1994. Description: SCP-2736 consists of two biologically identical adult males, SCP-2736-1 and SCP-2736-2, as far as can be ascertained, both are former U.S. President Richard M. Nixon. They are the result of a little understood event designated Incident Janus 2736, which resulted in a hitherto non-anomalous Richard M. Nixon being split into two distinct individuals through unknown, anomalous means. SCP-2736-1 and SCP-2736-2 appear to share the entirety of Richard M. Nixon's memories up to Incident Janus 2736, at which point each individual developed a distinct consciousness. However, this cannot be conclusively verified due to the unavailability of SCP-2736-2 for study. SCP-2736-1 has been in Foundation custody since Incident Janus 2736, allowing its existence to remain concealed from the public. Despite having been produced through anomalous means, SCP-2736-1 displays no anomalous properties save for sharing a Level 2 causal relationship, physical, mental, with SCP-2736-2, see Addenda 3, 5. Heavy scarring is present on subject's chest, the result of injuries sustained during Incident Janus 2736. SCP-2736-2 is the individual known to the world as Richard M. Nixon, having served as the 37th President of the United States from 1969 to 1974. Due to SCP-2736-2's high status and visibility, as well as the protection and continued interference of GOI-113 with Foundation efforts at recovery, SCP-2736-2 remains uncontainable at present. Point 2. Recovery. On June 21, 1951, Undercover Task Force Theta 3-3, Federal Reserves, conducted a covert surveillance mission at the private campground known as Bohemian Grove, in Monte Rio. CA.3 Theta 3-3 agents embedded in the campground's security force observed a summer solstice celebration attended by members of GOI-113, which culminated in Incident Janus 2736. Film Log Transcript 2736-01, Surveillance Mission 113 V779. Date, June 21, 1951. Time, 22:48 PST to 23:27 PST. Location, Bohemian Grove, Loy 729. Task Force, Theta 3-3, Deep Cover. Note: The original film log was compiled from footage covertly shot by Theta 3-3 agents using two concealed, handheld cameras. Camera 1 was situated at the back of the crowd, with a view of the entire clearing. Camera 2 was situated near the front of the crowd, with a relatively close view of the proceedings. Footage is in black and white. Begin log. 0001 Camera 1 shows a large clearing surrounded by giant redwoods. It is nighttime. At the center of the clearing stands a dilapidated 10-meter tall stone statue depicting a ram's head. At the foot of the statue a large bonfire is burning. Aside from some wooden torches carried by attendees, this is the only source of light. Several meters from the fire, a deep rectangular hole has been dug into the ground, and the removed earth piled next to it. The camera pans over a crowd, showing roughly 500 people in attendance. All are wearing dark robes with the hoods drawn. 7:28, Camera 1. The crowd parts as a group of 14 men arrive in the clearing and make their way toward the fire. All of them are dressed in robes. 7:40, Camera 2. The group walks past the camera. All men are wearing masks, save for one, whose face is visible. Examination of the still frames reveals the man to be Richard M. Nixon, to be henceforth referred to as RN. He appears nervous and afraid. 7:52, Camera 2. RN is escorted to the front of the crowd and made to stop at the foot of the statue. A high-backed wooden chair, similar in appearance to a throne, is brought beside him. Some of the men around RN remove his robe, leaving him naked. 8:30, Camera 2. RN is made to sit down on the wooden chair, to which his wrists and ankles are strapped. A noose is placed around his neck, and a crudely made crown placed on his head. The noose appears to serve a symbolic purpose, as it is not attached to a supporting beam. The crown appears to have been fashioned from shards of bone. 11:13, Camera 2. 12 of the masked men position themselves around RN. Each one produces a knife from inside his robe. The 13th man, who will henceforth be referred to as Speaker, turns toward the crowd. Speaker, tonight marks the dawn of the new age. Applause and cheers from the crowd. Speaker, tonight we witness the birth of the first. More cheering. 12:05, Camera 2. One of the masked men, who will henceforth be referred to as Masked Man 1, approaches RN. Crowd becomes silent. 12:52, Camera 2. Masked Man 1 raises his knife to RN's face. Screams of pain from RN. 13:20, Camera 2. Masked Man 1 faces the crowd and raises his arm high above his head. He is holding a small object in his hand, from which blood appears to be dripping. Speaker, we offer his left eye to the fire, that the king may always see. 13:33, Camera 2. Masked Man 1 throws the small object into the bonfire. 13:49, Camera 2. Another masked man, who will henceforth be referred to as Masked Man 2, approaches RN with his knife raised and takes hold of his jaw with his free hand. RN is heard screaming in pain. After several seconds a gurgling sound is heard. Speaker, we throw his tongue into the flames, that the king may never betray himself. 14:42, Camera 2. Masked Man 2 throws a small object into the bonfire. 15:10, Camera 2. The remaining masked men, to be henceforth referred to as Masked Men 3 to 12, line up at RN's side and take turns cutting at his hands with their knives. Sustained screams of pain by RN. Speaker, we cast his fingers into the furnace, that the king's grip may never weaken. 16:31, Camera 2. Masked Men 3 to 12 each throw a small object into the bonfire. 17:19, Camera 2. RN is now bleeding profusely from the injuries sustained to his face and hands. Several of the masked men remove him from the chair and carry him over to the nearby hole, into which he is lowered. 18:44, Camera 2. Several of the masked men take shovels and begin burying RN alive. Speaker, we give his body to the pit, that the eternal depths may grind it to dust, rending chaff from wheat. 2125, Camera 2. The masked men finish burying RN alive. Applause and cheering from the crowd. 2142, Camera 1. Two identical straw effigies, each measuring roughly 3 meters in height, are brought from the edge of the clearing to the foot of the statue, and propped up over the bonfire. 2214, Camera 2. The effigies begin to burn. The crowd is silent. 2438, Camera 1. As the effigies continue to burn, they start producing sparks, flashes of light and small, fireworks-like explosions. It is not known whether explosives had previously been placed inside the effigies, or if these phenomena have an anomalous cause. 2901, Camera 2. The effigies crumble as they finish burning. Here, Theta 3-3 agents reported that the bonfire flames turned a deep red and appeared to grow darker, though this is not properly visible on the black and white film. A low sound reminiscent of stone grinding against stone becomes audible. The sound, of unknown origin, is heard throughout the clearing for several minutes, steadily growing in volume. 3505, Camera 2. The two effigies have been completely reduced to ashes. Here, Theta 3-3 agents reported that the bonfire flames regain their usual color and brightness. The grinding sound gradually fades away. The crowd is silent. Speaker, the first will be reborn. 3749, Camera 2. View of the filled-in hole where RN is buried. The earth over the hole begins to shift, as though something were moving under the surface. 3801, Camera 2. Two hands emerge from the ground, and a naked man pulls himself out of the hole before collapsing in exhaustion on the ground. Examination of still frames show that the man is Richard M. Nixon, although none of the injuries inflicted by the masked men are visible on his body. This individual will henceforth be referred to as SCP-2736-2. 3809, Camera 2. Speaker approaches SCP-2736-2 and helps it to stand up. 3815, Camera 2. A second naked man pulls himself out of the hole. Examination of still frames reveals the man is also Richard M. Nixon. Again, none of the injuries inflicted by the masked men are visible on his body. This individual will henceforth be referred to as SCP-2736-1. 3843, Camera 2. Speaker appears to address SCP-2736-2 before handing it a knife. 3851, Camera 2. SCP-2736-2 takes hold of the knife and turns toward SCP-2736-1. SCP-2736-1 attempts to stand up, but before it is able to, SCP-2736-2 jumps on top of it and attempts to stab it with the knife. The two men struggle, with SCP-2736-1 sustaining a number of deep lacerations to its chest. 3930. Camera 2, SCP-2736-1 takes hold of a rock on the ground beside it and strikes SCP-2736-2 on the side of the head with it. SCP-2736-2 falls back, stunned. SCP-2736-1, bleeding from its injuries, stands up and flees from the crowd. 3941, Camera 1. View of SCP-2736-1 running toward the trees. Several of the masked men, as well as men from the crowd, start running after it. End log. At this point, taking advantage of the general confusion, Theta 3-3 Commander William Meeks instructed Theta 3-3 agents to attempt to recover SCP-2736-1 and extract it from Bohemian Grove. It was thought that SCP-2736-1 might prove amenable to the Foundation given GOI-113's treatment of it, as well as provide valuable information regarding GOI-113 and LOI-729. The extraction was successful, though 3 Theta 3-3 agents were killed in the ensuing firefight with Bohemian Grove Security Force. Interview Log 2736-001. Date, June 22, 1951. Location, Site 109, Infirmary C. Interviewer, Commander William Meeks, MTF Theta 3-3. Interviewee, SCP-2736-1. Begin log. WM, I'd like to ask you some questions, if you're feeling up to it. SCP-2736-1, all right. I suppose I owe you boys that much. WM, thank you. For the record, could you please state your name, age, and occupation? SCP-2736-1, Richard Nixon, 38. I'm a U.S. Senator. WM, how did you first become involved with Bohemian Grove? SCP-2736-1, about a year ago I was introduced to some people at a dinner. Real bigwigs. We got to talking, and they said I should come to the Grove for a weekend. WM, so you went. SCP-2736-1, some people would kill for an invitation like that. WM, what happened when you were there? SCP-2736-1, nothing much, that first time. They mostly showed me around. Beautiful place, all that forest, those redwoods. Old, real old. We spent most of the time at one of the lodges, drinking, smoking. We talked. WM, what about? SCP-2736-1, well, me, actually. They seemed real interested in me, kept asking what I wanted out of life, what my plans for the future were. At one point I mentioned my career wasn't going as great as I thought it could. They told me maybe they could help. WM, help, in what way? SCP-2736-1, they didn't exactly say then, they just told me I should start coming to the Grove regularly, meet some more people. Wasn't long I was spending at least one weekend a month there, sometimes more. The people they had there, I tell you. Seemed like everyone who mattered was a member. Congressmen, governors, you name it. People with real power, too, bankers, defense contractor presidents, oil magnates. And these men I'd never even heard of, but you could tell how important they were just by the way the millionaires and billionaires looked at them. Like they were scared of them. After just a few months there I'd made more political contacts than I had in my entire career up to that point. All of a sudden I had all these prospects. WM, so how did you wind up here? SCP-2736-1, size, this one night I was invited to a ceremony. They said it was a club tradition, so I didn't question it when they gave me a robe to wear. We had to walk to this place in the forest called the Ram Shrine. Hundreds of us, all walking in the dark with torches. Took us almost an hour. Then we reached this open area with a statue of a ram's head, and the ceremony started. Real macabre stuff. At first I wasn't sure if I was meant to take it seriously, but then I saw things. That's when I realized who I was dealing with, what those people were capable of achieving. When we got back to the lodge that night they made me a member. Wasn't long after that they offered to make me king. WM, make you king? SCP-2736-1, they said we were entering a new era for mankind, but before that could happen 4 great kings would have to rise to prepare the way. They said they'd been looking for someone like me for a long time, someone to be the first king. They told me the whole world could be mine, all I had to do was say yes. WM, you accepted. SCP-2736-1, pauses, yes. And then last night they brought me back to the Ram Shrine and, well, you were there, you saw it? They'd warned me it wasn't going to be pleasant, I didn't realize it would be that bad. But they said all they'd be doing to me would be for a reason. That before I could be the first I had to be reborn. When they put you in the earth you remained buried for over 15 minutes. Do you remember anything that happened during that time? SCP-2736-1, not much. I think I was in shock from the blood loss, and when they started shoveling earth on me I thought that was it. I suffocated, and everything went black, but I didn't die, though. I had these. I guess I'd call them dreams, except I can't remember what they were about. But there was someone else with me in the dreams, some man. He was in the dark, couldn't see his face. He said something about stars. I think I was crying. Then I woke up, still in that hole, only I wasn't hurt anymore. I panicked, started clawing my way out. That's when I felt something move against me. It was him. By the time I got out of the hole he was already standing there. The masked man gave him a knife, told him to cut out my heart and, well, you know the rest. I didn't think I had it in me, knocking him out like that. Must have been my Navy training kicking in. And that dream you had, you said. SCP-2736-1, listen, I'm really tired, and I need to call my wife, tell her where I am. Do think you could arrange that? I'm afraid that won't be possible. End log. Interview log 2736-002. Date, June 23, 1951. Location, Site 109, Infirmary C. Interviewer, Commander William Meeks, MTF Theta 3-3. Interviewee, SCP-2736-1. Begin log. SCP-2736-1, I told you, I'm not saying anything else to you until you let me talk to my wife. I lost 3 men getting you out of that place, not to mention an entire surveillance network that's taken us decades to establish. You need to start cooperating with us. SCP-2736-1, it's not like I'm not grateful for what you did, but you've got me locked up here like some goddamn convict. You can't do this to me, I'm a US Senator. Now you call your supervisor, or whoever it is that's in charge here, and you tell him I'm going home, today. Pat and the girls must be worried sick, poor things. Well, actually. SCP-2736-1, what? That's what I came here to discuss with you. The other you, the one we couldn't recover last night, we've located him. SCP-2736-1, well, that's good news. Where is he? At your house. SCP-2736-1, at my. Becomes agitated, what's he doing there? What does he want? God, are Pat and the girls okay? Did he hurt them? It's not what you think, your family's safe. SCP-2736-1, you're sure? Yes, it's more complicated than that. See, the other you, he's not just at your house. He's been living there since yesterday. As far as your wife and daughters are concerned, you're not even missing. SCP-2736-1, prolonged silence, that thing is with them now. Yes. SCP-2736-1, and they don't. They think he's me. That's right. I'm sorry. SCP-2736-1, becomes agitated, but you gotta go there, you gotta get him out of my house. We'd like to, but your friends from the Grove, they seem to want him there. They've got security on him like you wouldn't believe. We can't even get close. SCP-2736-1, but that's They can't just do that, put some imposter in my place like that. You've gotta warn Pat about this, you've gotta let me call her. WM, like I said before, we can't let you speak to her. That's not up for discussion. As for warning her, there isn't much of a point. I mean, even if we managed to get through to her, I doubt she'd believe a word we said. SCP-2736-1, but they can't just. WM, I understand this is upsetting for you, but there really isn't much we can do, at least for the time being. That said, any information you can give us about Bohemian Grove, your interactions there, what you think happened to you the other night, it could all help us find a way to solve this. SCP-2736-1, shouting, that's your solution? I just learned some creature is sleeping in the same bed as my wife, and you try to pump me for more information? You've got some goddamn nerve. WM, hey, we're not even sure she is your wife, so yeah, I think we're entitled to some answers. SCP-2736-1, what are you talking about? WM, you keep telling us you're the real Richard Nixon, like it should be obvious to us. But nothing I've seen, nothing you've said to me, has pointed to you being any more real than the other you. For all we know, the man in your house is the real you, and you're the fake. Or maybe you're both Richard Nixon, both real. SCP-2736-1, that thing isn't me, I told you. I've been thinking about it a lot, since I got here. About what happened at the Grove. I think I understand it now. WM, oh. SCP-2736-1, what they did to me, turning me into two people, it's not. They didn't make two identical people, that wasn't the point. I'm not the same as him, I know it, I feel it. Hell, I'm not even the same man I was a few days ago. What they did to me, it changed me. WM, in what way? SCP-2736-1, used to be I was so restless, I had so much ambition. I craved advancement, position, power. WM, but not anymore? SCP-2736-1, it's like that part of me's just gone. Well, not gone. I know where it went. WM, you mean? SCP-2736-1, size, you know that night they offered me to be the first? Do you know what they asked me, just before? Do you know what I said to them that made them decide I was the right guy for the job? WM, what? SCP-2736-1, they asked me what I was prepared to do for power. I told them, anything. I said that. Sounds crazy now, but I said it. And I meant it, every fiber in me did. Like I said, it's not who I am anymore. But it's who he is. Hell, it's all he is. That's what they wanted. They got their king. And now you tell me those bastards have got him living with my family. End log. Addendum 2736-01. Abridged timeline of SCP-2736-2's political career. June 6, 1951, Incident Janus 2736 at Bohemian Grove. November 4, 1952, Dwight D. Eisenhower is elected to the office of the President of the United States, with SCP-2736-2 as his Vice President. November 11, 1956, Dwight D. Eisenhower is re-elected to the office of the President of the United States, with SCP-2736-2 as his Vice President once again. November 5, 1968, SCP-2736-2 is elected to the office of the President of the United States. July 20, 1969, NASA's Apollo 11 spaceflight lands the first two humans on the Moon. November 7, 1972, SCP-2736-2 is re-elected to the office of the President of the United States. August 9, 1974, SCP-2736-2 resigns from the office of the President of the United States in the wake of the Watergate scandal. September 8, 1974, U.S. President Gerald Ford grants SCP-2736-2 a full pardon for any crimes committed during its presidency. Addendum 2736-02. The following interview with SCP-2736-1 was conducted on September 15, 1974, 23 years since initial containment, in order to discuss SCP-2736-2's recent resignation as U.S. President. Interview Log 2736-491. Date, September 15, 1974. Location, Armed Site 29. Interviewer, Dr. Samuel Bennett, Project Head/2736. Interviewee, SCP-2736-1. Begin log. SB, I take it you've been watching the news. SCP-2736-1, I tell you, you never get used to seeing your face on television. SB, chuckles, I can imagine. How have things been for you, though? Can't have been easy watching all of this unfold. SCP-2736-1, it wasn't, watching him do that to my name, to this country, to Pat and the girls. They're even saying his marriage is on the rocks, did you hear that? Not that I'm complaining, mind you, but I just keep thinking of Pat, about what she must be going through. At least he resigned, though, there's that. It's over now. SB, yes, his political career certainly seems to be over. Actually, I was hoping to get your thoughts on something. SCP-2736-1, all right. SB, now, before the ritual at Bohemian Grove that began all this, you said your friends had told you the world would be yours if you became king. SCP-2736-1, that's right. SB, then how do you account for the events of the last few months? SCP-2736-2 becoming embroiled in a nationwide scandal, losing all his political capital, being forced to resign in disgrace? And it's not just the last months, is it? From the start it's never really gone his way. First time he ran for president in 1960 he lost to Kennedy. Then Kennedy winds up dead not long after, and a few years later SCP-2736-2 does become president, but even then, the Vietnam War, the bombing of Cambodia, all terribly unpopular things that ultimately result in failure. And finally the Watergate scandal. We're far from the success your friends at the Grove promised you, wouldn't you agree? SCP-2736-1, yes, that's true. SB, I'd like to know why you think that is. Is it possible the promises were all a lie? SCP-2736-1, I really doubt that. I mean, it was in their best interest to put me in power and keep me there. SB, then do you think they simply weren't capable of delivering on their promises? That maybe they were never as powerful as you were led to believe? SCP-2736-1, no, not a chance. I know for a fact they were capable of everything they promised me. More, probably. SB, then, why? Why all the setbacks? Why this latest failure? SCP-2736-1, well, my friends from the Grove, as you call them, they haven't been idle all these years, have they? SB, what do you mean? SCP-2736-1, I mean, they've been looking for me since that night at the Grove. I'm right, aren't I? SB, I'm not cleared to discuss this with you. SCP-2736-1, I understand that. But I'm not blind, I know there's a reason you transferred me to this place. Why else would I need all this security? I'm not dangerous, this isn't for me. I think my friends were looking for me back then, and they still are today. I think all this time they never stopped. SB, well, let's say for a moment that were true. Why do you think that would be? Why would they keep dedicating so much time and effort to finding you? SCP-2736-1, because the ritual was never finished. When you guys rescued me at the Grove, you threw a big wrench in their plans. Didn't even realize it, but you did. That's why it's all gone to hell for them, for him. I was supposed to die that night. End log. Addendum 2736-03. On October 10, 1974, SCP-2736-1 fell ill with phlebitis, and had to undergo surgery with a Foundation phlebologist. The same day, SCP-2736-2 was hospitalized for phlebitis in Long Beach, California, for which it received surgery and treatment. Addendum 2736-04. On June 22, 1993, 42 years since initial containment, Patricia Nixon died of lung cancer at her home in Park Ridge, New Jersey. SCP-2736-1 was greatly affected by her death, and in the following months grew increasingly withdrawn, refusing to participate in interviews with Project Head/2736. Subject also frequently complained of poor sleep. Addendum 2736-05. On April 18, 1994, 43 years since initial containment, at roughly 1745 EST, SCP-2736-1 suffered a massive cerebral vascular accident, CVA, and was transferred to Armed Site 29's Yellow Infirmary. It was later learned that SCP-2736-2 had also suffered a CVA at the same moment at its home in Park Ridge, New Jersey, and had been taken to New York Presbyterian Hospital in New York City, New York. Both subjects were left partially paralyzed and incapable of speech, and developed cerebral edema over the following days. Despite its condition, on the evening of April 21, 1994, SCP-2736-1 inexplicably began to speak, albeit in an agitated and delirious manner. Infirmary staff alerted Project Head/2736, who was able to record nearly 20 minutes of audio content. Audio log 2736-01. Date, April 21, 1994. Time, 1907 EST to 1925 EST. Location, Armed Site 29, Yellow Infirmary. Subject, SCP-2736-1. Begin log. 0046, the ground bled red oil for 7 days, and we wondered at the bodies buried there. Billions. Souls are always the first casualty. Nothing changes, but change is coming. 303, the moon was only one small step. 755, unintelligible. 1055, prayers are pretty things, but you can't escape it. The sky will rend. 1211, the first falls on his sword, but his blood sows the seeds for the next 1,000 years. The second wipes up all the sins, and no one finds the gnawed bones under the castle. The third smiles at the world with double-edged teeth, and his laugh opens the floodgates. The fourth defies the masters and forever pays the price. 1345, chimneys higher than mountains. Smoke to blot out the clouds. We will unite under one banner. New orders of magnitude. World without end. Without eyelids. 1430, sustained laughter. 1614, America fell in the beginning. It will fall again, deeper down the well to the other places that don't let you blink. You were warned of this. 1703, weeping. 1818, voice trembling with fear. He sees me. End log. Immediately following this, SCP-2736-1 fell into a deep coma, SCP-2736-2 was later reported to have fallen into a coma at the same moment. The following day, April 22, 1994, SCP-2736-1 and SCP-2736-2 simultaneously died at 21:08 EST. On April 23, 1994, SCP-2736 was reclassified as neutralized.